Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first and launch episode for 2021. As one of our council leads, head of the Measurement Council says, it's Claire Trafankowska, welcome to quarter 5 of 2020. But no, seriously, welcome. It's a beautiful day here in Cape Town. Maybe give a shout out on the chat in terms of where you are at this time, maybe working from home, maybe you're back in the office. Anywhere you are, welcome to today. We have a fantastic lineup and a particular thank you to our speakers and our sponsors for that. So maybe I can just give a big shout out to our event partners, Gumtree, Everlytic, the Red and Yellow Creative School of Business and Biz Community who helped make today possible. Today's session is all about the digital customer experience. And in a way, it serves to really showcase all the episodes that are coming up for the year. You can register for all of them up front. If you're an IAB member, they're all for free. So probably at this point would be a good time to introduce myself, since I'm obviously not Seko Fatso. I'm stepping in for her today. I'm the CEO of the IAB, and based on the attendees here, I can see that most of you know me already, but thought I would just say, how's it? Right, so welcome back to those of you who've been part of the series for the last 2 years. Yes, this is our 3rd year. But we've got a whole set of new insights to share with you. And particularly today, we've got, in terms of digital customer experience, we're looking at it from all angles. Haydn Townsend, who's the MD of Accenture Interactive, and also our IAB chair and executive board member, will be talking to the experience of digital customer experience. We've got Imraan Rajab, who's the COO of Mediacom. He is also the head of the IAB Future of Measurement Council, and he'll be sharing some top-line insights from our Future of Measurement report. It's like gold, the insights there. So really excited to hear more about that from Imraan. And then last but not least, we've got Joey Khuvutlu, who's the MD of HelloComputer. He resides in Joburg and is also the head of the IAB Education Council. And he'll be sharing those top-line insights before we even launch the report in terms of the Digital Skills Gap Survey that is powered by our partner, the Red and Yellow Creative School of Business. Business School, Creative School of Business, that's right. So with no further ado, I'm going to kickstart by introducing Haydn. Remember to share your questions for Haydn. In the Q&A, we'll be doing questions straight after his talk. So handing over to you, Haydn, welcome.
Thank you, Paula. I'm in Joburg, and now as soon as you made it to competition, our weather went to a ball of, I just see it got overcast. I was about to go like, we're also pumping over here. So, but it's not a competition. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. As long as it doesn't affect your bandwidth.
Ciao. No, not at all, not at all. It is cloud, but it's not that cloud, yeah. So
awesome. Thanks, Haydn.
Thank you very much. I guess just this topic is so close to my heart, and something I'm glad we're kicking the year off with, both for me personally. It's literally influenced my direction of travel in my career and where I've gone, and the decisions I've made because of the power of experience and how it's starting to rise in prominence. I think even for the IAB, if I look at where we're going with our focus on digital marketing and all that influences that, this extension of the experience beyond just marketing and communications, and how experience is starting to build brands. And most, if not all of that, eventually will become digital and is digital already there. We were just looking yesterday, we had launched a massive tech trends research where one of the massive trends is that every business is a digital business. So every experience is a digital experience, and you'll see some of that. So there's no ways in my next 20 minutes or so I'll be able to deep dive into it. But what I'm hoping is that I can impress the importance on you to go and look further, dig further, go understand and explore it further. And what I'm hoping to also do is just explain why it's so important and where it's come and where it's come from and where it's going to. So you'll also see I'm talking about BX and not CX, and that will become clearer as we're moving through. What is the difference between customer experience and the business of experience? So let me get into it right away. Always good to start with some stats just to ground us, and some research. 90%, I mean, this is a staggering number, right? 90% of executives in the Forbes Global Top 500 companies believe that customer experience, improved customer experience, will be the key battleground over the coming years. It is not a marketing department. It is not a CX department. These are the top executives, the boards of these companies. So it's obviously become something quite powerful. And what we've seen is the migration from communications being a very powerful lever, but isolated in the organization, to digital becoming more important and making the communications department or marketing department now then broader and more relevant. But with the leap to experience, marketing is fundamentally sitting at the core of what the business does. Experience and managing the entire consumer experience is something that matters to the entire organization. And you'll see that come through as I talk a bit about a BX. On the left side, it's here, it's now. This is not a future trend. Obviously, I think we've all seen it. And the research varies whether it's 140% to 300%, but everyone agrees that the happier customer is, the more they'll come back and the more they'll spend. Very intuitive to this group of people, sometimes not so intuitive when you're looking at, okay, let's start with the customer, because if they're happier, they're going to stay with us. They go like, yeah, but our tech has this legacy debt, our IT systems have this. And when you look at it from that point of view, you'll see it's not always that easy to execute. And then on the other side, very importantly, is if we get it wrong, they vote with their feet, right? They'll absolutely walk. But more importantly, and I'm going to touch a little bit more on this, experiences have an echo. They reverberate through the universe. And that is why it's become important. And there's another important reason, which I'll touch on as we go. So if we just take some kind of effects that have happened, and I call it effects because these things, these are the symptoms, it's not the disease, or it's the effects, not the cause, right? But companies, 71% of companies know they're on the brink of significant disruption. 74% are rethinking processes and operating models, right? This is a real look at the way you do business. The implications are so fundamental to business models, operating models. 92% of companies are accelerating investments in digital transformation. Of course, COVID has pushed that. A lot of this research is from a COVID-19 consumer pulse we just recently did, but you see that these effects are starting to kick in. 20% feel highly prepared, but another way of looking at it is 80% feel highly unprepared for what's coming. And people are doing all sorts of interesting things, buying insolvent companies, finding IP, trying to get talent. Everybody's in a bit of a scramble. And this last piece, RPA, robotic process automation, is going to impact the physical world in such a massive way. 73% of executives know that it's going to affect the physical world. So stores, physical touch points, roads, forecourts of the future, all of these things, and hence everything now becomes a digital business. So if these are the effects that we're seeing, what's the cause? So I've taken a bit of a step back because, looking at what is causing this and when did this happen? I'm an ad man. I was born into advertising. I went to ad school. I did all of those good things. And then there came a point where this thing just started fading. Its power just started dropping. And I was like, what's happening here? Why did this happen? And to my earlier point, the kind of migration from the power of communication to the power of experience. So I went back to our founding fathers, Philip Kotler. For those, I'm sure almost everybody on this call should know him. If you don't, you really do. And he's written, with David Acker and Philip Kotler. These are one of the founding fathers of our marketing practice. And more recently, he's written Marketing 4.0, right? And if I've got the reference there at the bottom, if you haven't read it, please do. It's not textbooky, but it does talk to the fundamental principles that are influencing us. Yes, there's been 2 and 3 in between, and there were changes that are happening, but it's not like Game of Thrones, so you can get to 4 and still understand what's going on. But the heart of it is 3 key drivers of purchase decision. These drivers haven't changed, by the way. As seen on TV, big brand, mass communication, that, and I'm talking now about pre-online, pre-social media. So let's go back to about 2005, right? As seen on TV, big brand, TV, radio, outdoor, print, all the things we do with our eyes closed at scale for the last 60, 70 years is the #1 place consumers would go for information about what to purchase. And it had a massive disproportionate influence on their decision making. #2 would be friends and family. And I say friends and family because it was quite a close-knit circle. This is before we could scale it and blow it out. So if I wanted a computer, I went to my IT guy and said, hey, what do you think of this? If I was going to buy a car, I would go to my uncle who's a mechanic. So you go to quite a tight-knit network. And then #3 would be ourselves. And it sounds counterintuitive to go, how can my own opinions matter so little in the decision making? Well, your sphere of influence and understanding is limited to what you've bought. So I know Volkswagen, but I've never bought an Amarok. So if I want to buy an Amarok, I need to speak to somebody who has had that. So your understanding of that brand is very limited. What has happened is today's consumer has become so dependent on the opinions of others, and not just people you know, people you don't know. We will take the opinion of a complete stranger on a peer review or on a review or on a peer community that we've never met. So we now have a community of people who own Amaroks that we could turn to. And the reason this has happened is connectivity itself, and of course, social media. Now, this is where the echo comes in. And what's happened now is that we're turning to communities, we're turning to online communities on how-to videos, we're turning to the review pages, we're turning to a whole bunch of people that we never had access to before. So TV, communication, radio, print, outdoor starts receding in prominence. So no matter how cool and powerful that brand ad or that retail ad is, if 150 people give it a 1 star, you will not buy it. It is that powerful, right? And then, of course, our opinions still now recede into third. So quite an important distinction. But not just social media, the landscape, the media, the digital marketing and automation landscape that's enabling personalization and sharing of information and all of these tools are blowing out of proportion. Every massive ERP company, whether that's SAP buying Hybris or e-commerce, Adobe buying Magento, if you look at all of these things, it's all about people moving into this space, this consumer-facing space. And this is a classic case of marketing myopia. The MarTech 5000 now has over 8,000 solutions. So I think they should have thought of their naming convention a little more. But the reality is we're already on 8,200, 300. And this is what the marketer is faced with. But it's a consumer that has access to information and power that can literally kill your brand or make your brand in split seconds. So in that world, experience starts mattering so much. This is one of the last outposts of advertising for me. And last night this happened, where Brendan Seary in Orchids and Onions, I'm sure everybody's aware of these, was always, you know, great ads got the orchid and the crap ads got the onion. And yesterday he gave Cell C, incidentally, the orchid for actually just for the fact that it was storytelling and not retail. It's not actually about the content, and that's not what I'm here to talk about. But what actually happened was he gave an experience the onion. So it was Hewlett Packard. He went to buy a computer, and then he had to turn to Takealot and etc. So if you read the quote there, the experience shows you can be as clever as you like in the digital space. But unless you prioritize customer service, you're wasting a fortune. HP, you may collect your solid state onion with no moving parts. I'm not going to deliver it. You literally gave an experience an onion and an execution an ad the orchid. And in here, actually, Takealot gets the orchid. So you're starting to see things that's influencing consumers in such a big way that it's making its way into culture and into brand decision making. Why does experience matter? Companies are not built around the consumer, right? It's again intuitive to this audience, but IT, legal, the operating models, the way businesses are constructed have never been built on the consumer. If I outsource my call center to India, it is half the price. That's what matters to the company. The fact that we already have so many accents, and my colored accent being as pronounced as any, dealing with different accents in different markets, struggling to understand each other, having crackling lines, that is not what's driving the decision. Cost is driving the decision. So you're seeing all of this happening. But now when businesses are realizing we have to go experience first, a decision to outsource like that could be much more powerful and much more considered when you're looking at it from the consumer lens. So decisions are starting to happen. Technology is enabling a lot of those things. And you're starting to see that come through. Now, if experience is so powerful, what does this mean, right? What does it mean for us? Well, there's actually a massive problem. And what we're seeing at the moment is that customer experience, as powerful as it is running out of legs, okay? This is some research that Forrester has done last year, well, year before last, end of 2019. And this is talking to companies and brands that have started investing in customer experience about, let's say, 10 years ago, right? Most of these companies are starting to see diminishing returns. Customer experience, and in the definition of customer experience, which is where the difference between CX and BX comes in, just optimizing our front end for the customer, making better websites, better apps, more frictionless point of sale interactions, driving just the front end is no longer enough. Stagnant growth we see in CX investment. And why is that happening? Because the elite brands are getting very, very, very minimal change in their CX interventions. Now I'm gonna unpack this a little more, and you'll see why that's happening. So we're starting to see a sameness. We're kind of aggregating towards the middle, where every app is good, every site, and of course there are a bunch of laggards who still have a massive opportunity in CX just on its own, just fixing the front end without touching the back end. And I'll talk a little more about what that means. So we are doing a pivot. And this is a very difficult pivot, right? Because what it means is that you can't just look at the front end. You've got to go very deep into the organization. Now, to go deep into the organization, you have to have the trust of the organization. So what are we looking at? Business models, employee experience, operating models, technology that transcend MarTech or MadTech. So you need to have a very holistic view, and I'll explain to you why that's important. But we're drilling deep down into this. And then a very, very important point is purpose. And I'm going to tell you why, and I'll show you why. But experience doesn't operate in a vacuum. If it's just a rational transactional exercise, you're going to come unstuck. It needs to be purpose-led and purpose-driven. And why is that? This is probably one of the scariest statistics to any baby boomer out there who's grown up in a society that profit before all else matters. Shareholder return before all else matters. This is a recent survey saying 6 out of 10 millennials, 63%, said the primary purpose of business, not the secondary purpose, the primary purpose should be to improve society instead of generating profit. Now, to somebody who's grown up with a profit obsession and cost reduction and driving maximization of ROI, that is a scary thing, because to improve society doesn't necessarily make money. So one of the tech trends yesterday that we saw was sustainability combined with automation. So just automating and it damages the environment actually doesn't give you the win you need. So a very powerful point. So when you look at purpose, you need to look at what's holding it all together. And then into what is the difference between CX and BX. I think everybody here will agree F&B are phenomenal when it comes to front-end optimization, customer experience. So phenomenal that you can switch with a selfie, right? How frictionless can you get? How easy can it get? But then on the right side of that equation, your application then goes into the system and you could take a day or two to get your account number. You could wait 7 to 10 days to receive your debit card. And then my personal favorite is some of that information is going to come in the mail. So you have to wait for the post office to bring you some other extra information. Now, it's clear that the front end and the back end are not talking. A frictionless business of experience fixes both the front and the back end simultaneously. So if you look at Time Bank have other issues. So, but in terms of this context, 5 minutes to open an account, no paperwork, no fees, frictionless. Of course, they're digital native. Of course, they're born in that era. They don't have legacy systems. They don't have all these things to latch onto. And you can get your bank card immediately with your account number at a Pick n Pay printed out. Now, it's clear front end and back end. And yes, they've had the luxury of being able to build it from scratch. But the legacy businesses have to fix the top so they talk together so that we can get there. And that's what we're talking about when we look at the business of experience. When you see this happen, you outperform. We've got massive research to back this, 6.4, 6.3 over a 7-year, 1-year, 3-year period. You will outperform your peers in top and bottom line. And there's significant proof, and this is on a compounded annual growth rate. So with 4 key areas that we're looking at. So I just want to touch on these 4 areas, and we could go into a lot more depth, but I want you just to think about these things. You need to obsess about the customer as your compass, and it needs to be purpose-led. So 60% of BX leaders, which is double the number of other respondents, acknowledge that you have to stand for something bigger. When you get a business that's just pushing product, you need to stop them and say, why are we here? Why do we exist? And they'll go, well, we have a mission and a vision. You go, mission and visions are internal tools. They help us decide where we want to go. But what is our purpose that changes the consumer's lives is what is actually going to matter into the future, because another fact around the millennials is we, over the next 20 years, going to see the largest transfer of wealth, generational wealth, seen in modern history, right? We already are a third of the way with that. Over the next 10 years, 15 years, we're going to see a massive shift. Now, the purchasing power will be moving to a millennial audience who cares about whether you are exploiting child labor in India, whether your CEO is faithful to his wife, whether your board is taking underhanded issues. And of course, government aside, when it comes to people who can vote with their money, they will. So you need to look at that as an important thing. The second thing is making experience, innovation, and everyday habit. 80% of BX leaders are confident about their ability to link CX innovation to business results. This is a massive flaw in many of our CX innovations. We look at vein metrics or we look at behavioral metrics. We don't look at business metrics. So yes, we can measure how friction it is, how quick a page loads, how fast the queue moves, how long it takes to answer the call in a call center. But we need to link that to business results. If you are not linking it to business results, we're going to stay low down on the food chain. So because BX and the business is way beyond just the customer experience front end, it now needs to impact the business in its entirety. Then expanding the remit way across the organization. Marketing is no longer, there's a new role called the Chief Marketing Technology Officer that's coming about. I personally think that role is just a stopgap while marketers haven't gotten their head around technology and technologists haven't gotten their head around marketing. Over time, we need to bring all of this together. You need to bring supply chain together. You need to bring procurement together. You need to bring operations together and go all in service of the experience. And nobody is better positioned in an organization than the marketers who've owned that customer agenda since the beginning of time to start influencing that throughout the organization. And lastly, before I play a video of an example, is a very important point. Syncing the tech, the data, and the human agenda. If you don't add in empathy and human insights and design thinking principles that start with the consumer, you're going to make decisions based on technology or on data. These 3 things are integrally linked. We absolutely have to look at it. 61% say the company has a clear view of which technology platforms they need to leverage. But the important part is to remain competitive and relevant. So if you're doing the decision based on Adobe versus Salesforce or SAP CX versus Salesforce CX Cloud, and you're doing it transactionally and not looking at what the impact is on the consumer, you will come unstuck, and also not looking at the impact on the people using those technologies. And that's kind of probably one of the biggest problems we have. Companies investing massively in marketing, advertising, experience technology, and 10-20% of the people know how to use them. So we got to sync those agendas together. I'm going to show you a case study with my few minutes left. It's a 4-minute video. Harley Davidson, existential crisis, and the video will unpack it clearly for you. But this is a brand that was internally focused, obsessed with what they stood for in the past, didn't look at where the consumers were going until it hit them so hard in the face that they had to stop. And if you look at this, you're going to see the changes, and you're going to see the changes on the outside, but what I want you to think about is what happened on the back end to enable those changes, how the board had to rethink. These are decisions about products. These are decisions about commerce. They're not just marketing decisions, they are business decisions. So enjoy it, and I'll chat to you straight after.
Since 1903, Harley-Davidson has represented cool rebellion and iconic American design. But by 2019, the chrome had lost its sheen. The brand was suffering as potential riders saw the community as unwelcoming, the product lineup as one note, and the Harley ethos of freedom as divisive. This was symptomatic of a wider category problem. The sport was shrinking as people saw riding as an expensive hobby at best and a dangerous one at worst. We knew we could provide Harley-Davidson with a unified brand experience. We needed to define a brand purpose that not only unifies a fragmented and confused brand, but on a larger scale, makes riding matter to a new generation. Because, ironically, while riding has become less relevant, the benefits of riding are more vital than ever. As society has modernized and digitized, we've lost touch with real-world communities, became insulated from the physical world around us, and sought new solutions for our anxieties. Yet true riders know that there's no better release than riding a Harley-Davidson, because riding a Harley is the cure for the modern condition. Our ambition? Turn Harley-Davidson into a full-throttle, well-being brand. Our purpose? To make space for the soul.
Keep scrolling. Order food. Skim headlines. Order shoes. Use AutoSend for flowers. Use AutoSend for birthdays. Don't go outside. Don't go outside. Don't leave the phone behind. No sync. Don't blink. Don't think. Don't ever let yourself feel this alive. Breathe. Ride.
We are using this radical new purpose to make every corner of the experience feel like a full-throttle, well-being brand, from how we communicate to how we innovate. First, we evolved the design of this American icon to reflect our purpose by creating a new wordmark. We updated the iconic bar and shield and developed a visual identity system that set new rules of the road. And since Make Space for the Soul meant a totally new approach to photography and casting, we delivered 560 retouched assets and redesigned all dealer literature. And naturally, this new sense of well-being impacted our communications, from launching the transcendent new electric live wire to expressing the concept in brand campaigns. We also brought a dose of our soulcraft to digital across Harley-Davidson's social presence. We even built a micro-segmentation in order to drive demand amongst new kinds of non-riders. But all this momentum would mean nothing if potential riders landed on our site and saw, well, this. So we were tasked with rebuilding Harley-Davidson.com from the ground up. The purpose came through our radically new front-end design, a sleek, airy aesthetic that didn't lose the Harley grit. We re-architected the site, making it easy for non-riders and experienced riders alike to navigate bike types and ride styles. We re-platformed the entire site to Adobe Experience Manager and its e-commerce to Hybris to create a modern-day buying experience. To deliver it, we assembled purpose-built pods of Droga 5 and Accenture Interactive developers to build it front to back. And in the future, this new take on well-being will soon inform new products and a whole new community strategy and experience. So now, from identity to communications, social to site, performance to e-commerce, Harley-Davidson is on the road toward a unified brand experience, designed to restore its place within culture.
Thank you. So, I mean, I guess it captures it. What I want you to do is just think behind that, how we had to change the board, how you had to get the operation system, how you had to look at new product development, research and development. It is a complete reshift, and it all started looking at the new consumer, understanding you need to be purpose-driven, and then redesigning the experience start to finish. And that's only the tip of the iceberg, and you'll see this rolling out globally. So thank you very much, Paula. I hope in my whirlwind tour, I've got the heart of that across. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Haydn. That was amazing and fantastic to see the case study video, to see those principles in action. And I think, we could raise so many points, but maybe to lead into the Q&A, and thanks to everyone for your questions. If you have any more, just shoot those through. If we can't answer them all today because of time, we can certainly, we'll have a look at our poll later and see which way is the best way to interact with our speakers on that. So watch out for the polls. So Haydn, it's amazing to see just, to talk around customer experience innovation, but linking it to the business results. I think that's often a failure and a hard job for the marketing department to link themselves in. So one of our questions here from the audience is, if we currently work in customer experience, CX, how do we shift from CX to BX to the business experience, which I imagine allows you to connect to the business results if we're only currently looking after the so-called front end?
It is a challenge, right? It's a challenge for us when I put on my agency hat, right? And you go, we used to optimizing content and A/B testing and just looking at the front end, and we've kind of migrated a bit. And I think it's such a tough one, because actually the holding companies, the bigger organizations, need to start seeing this. The people who are in service of those clients. Clients can fix the problem because I can bring in a consultant, I can bring in a tech company, and I can bring in an agency, and I put them together. But for us to be able to do that, we need to find ways to assemble ourselves. And I think the culture of partnership and culture of working together is, getting into a co-opetition mind space and going like, yes, we compete at one level, but we can partner at another level. Go and find somebody that can do you a value case. Go and find somebody that can do a tech assessment. Go find somebody that can optimize and build a unit. And of course, our current procurement systems will go like, no, I want to hire one company. I want to do this. But in the absence of that, you need to go and say, listen, we're going to reframe the brief. We're going to ask you broader questions, and we've assembled a team that can deliver this. So let's be solutions driven and not appoint this agency to do that. So it's going to happen through partnership, and in the end, I think it's all together.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. I think, when you link all those pieces together, the CMO, or now you say the CMTO as a transition period, is definitely in the center. And thank you for bringing that thinking onto the board at the IAB. Just that, cooperation, collaboration, it is certainly the mindset into 2021 if we're hoping to achieve these rather audacious goals. I think you used a sort of reference of Game of Thrones, and then I like the one, don't let your customers vote with their feet. We don't want them walking out the door. And maybe we're just running out of time here, and then we'll start introducing Imraan, but I don't know if there is a short answer, but I think this is a critical one from our attendees today. With all of this happening and these big transitions, and I do agree, culture and software probably being the two biggest factors in transitioning, you mentioned a decline in sort of influence of mass communication and the influence of that. Will it die? What's happening there?
I mean, the TV is dead statement really annoys me. We are in a very, very strong position. Linear TV, we can still reach 10 million plus people in one go. So it's always going to be there. But we've had a good run, right? From 1950, when David Ogilvy had the Man in the Hathaway shirt, when he realized we don't need to sell the shirt, we can sell the man, till today, where we're doing big brand advertising. And I'd say maybe the last 5-10 years or so, it's starting to wane. It's definitely not going to die, but its importance and relative importance is dropping. And you need to move into the areas and offer both and start augmenting in the areas that are growing. So you have to be able to do both, but if you just stay in communication, you're going to drop down.
Absolutely. I think you couldn't have put it better for 2021. A lot of our members ask, should I do this? Should I do that? And the answer, I think, for 2021, the choice is both. I think just
absolutely
that's what's happening. Let's put the hard hats on. Well, thank you, Haydn. It's been a pleasure to have you here today,
awesome.
As always. And we look forward to chatting again soon. You're more than welcome to switch your video off and get to those meetings. Right. With no further ado, actually, I think we've got time for a quick poll, which I think is important. So for those of you who don't know how to work the poll, it's literally going to pop up straight on your screen. The question here is, where do you feel more comfortable engaging with speakers from a webinar? Just something for us to learn and to see how you like to engage with them and how we could set that up for the future. So we're going to choose from a couple of sort of channels: Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, email, other. So I'm going to click the one I like because I can also vote. But just if you can just spend a second doing that. Just give everyone a moment. Wow, there we go. LinkedIn, fantastic. We've actually got a super IAB LinkedIn process and campaign coming up, led by Jessica, who's on the call from One Day Only. She's the head of our IAB Brand Council. So very excited about that. So thank you for the answer. I think we're on the same page. Awesome. Okay, without further ado, I would like to introduce Imraan Rajab. Imraan, as I'm busy introducing you, if you wouldn't mind just turning on your camera, unmuting, and you're already on it. Thank you. Right, so Imraan is an experienced, actually know this off by heart, I don't have to read it, but let's just do it justice. Imraan is an experienced marketing and media specialist with a passion for growing both businesses and people. And I think that's actually the Mediacom way. You know, it's business leadership through people, business growth through people. Imraan has an app passion as we talk digital customer experience. So as the COO for Mediacom, and also the IAB head of the Future of Measurement Committee. Imraan has a strong background in ad tech with a firm understanding of the ad tech ecosystem, its various providers, and how these can be used to help build marketing efficiencies for business. So welcome, and we look forward to hearing more from you today in terms of the Future of Measurement. Thanks, Imraan.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction, Paula, and hi, good morning. I'm not sure if it's still morning, probably just about going on afternoon now. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to say a quick shout out to Haydn. I thought that was an amazing presentation, some really great insights shared. And I think you might see some sort of common themes appearing in some of what I have to talk about today. So like Paula mentioned, I currently lead the Future of Measurement Committee within the IAB. And what we're really sort of keen on understanding is how we can use measurement to better understand digital media effectiveness, to help to provide a sort of attribution around the value of inventory in the digital media space. And overall, of course, help to encourage growth or stimulate growth in the digital industry using measurement as a tool for us to do so. And I'm going to be talking today a little bit about the measurement needs of the industry and how they are evolving. And a lot of that is going to be informed by a survey that we just ran and the results of which we've really just started to analyze and started to understand. But before I get into that, what I wanted to share was something that may come across as a little bit unrelated at first. This is actually something that I lifted from a presentation that I saw from a colleague of mine a couple of weeks ago, but I thought it was really interesting and definitely relevant for what I want to talk about today. For those of you who haven't seen it, this is the Reddit 5-second Super Bowl ad that ran in the Super Bowl. I think it was about a week or 2 weeks ago now. And yes, you heard it right. They bought a 5-second Super Bowl ad, and it was literally just this sort of static image. I mean, there was a little bit of an animation in between there. But within 5 seconds, the idea is that you probably are never going to be able to read what's actually in this ad, right? And the ad has been called really smart. It's been called really disruptive. And if you haven't been exposed to everything that happened around this ad, you probably are sort of lost around why people would think this is a good ad. 5 seconds, it's largely text. There wasn't really anything more to it, to be honest. And yeah, for those who are not aware, there was a whole lot of news media coverage around one of the specific subreddits within the Reddit platform. Wall Street Bets is what it's called and what it's known as, and how they were sort of really challenging Wall Street, the typical Wall Street sort of investors and the hedge funds in that area around a specific stock, and that stock was GameStop. So if you're not familiar with the whole story, it's really something that you can find a lot of coverage of in many different news outlets. But yeah, essentially, the idea behind this ad, if you look at this without any of that context, what's really clear is that this is not a really well-designed ad. Firstly, it's booked as a 5-second. Like I said, it's purely text. It's very difficult to actually read. You probably had to pause or rewind if you're using a DVR or something similar to actually take in the ad. And the real sort of catch with this is that this ad would not have worked, and I don't think would have been called smart or disruptive, if it wasn't for everything else that happened around this on the Reddit platform, in the social media channels, in the news outlets that covered the story for a good few weeks. And I think it's a really good example of how Reddit really took advantage of the overall sort of ecosystem of things that were happening around their platform. Some of them being on digital channels, some of them being outside of digital channels, and really took advantage of that to try and leverage and bring to life a full holistic story in terms of an overall unified customer experience. Yeah, if you don't know too much about it, I really would encourage you to read a little bit about it. It's a little bit amusing, definitely some interesting reading. And yeah, I think it's something that we can all learn from in terms of how we should be approaching the digital customer experience. From a measurement point of view, though, it's quite challenging when we talk about the digital customer experience. And when I mentioned all of the different things that were happening around the story based on Reddit, it's quite difficult to have a real thorough understanding of how we sort of measure the effectiveness of all of these different things, the different touch points that sort of make up this ecosystem that people were engaging in around the story. Yeah, I think it's something that we need to take into account because we know we're living and doing business now in a new normal. I won't talk too much about it. I think it's been spoken to death now, but we know that the proliferation of digital channels, fragmentation of digital channels, all that sort of thing has been emphasized even more with changes that the pandemic and subsequent lockdown across the world has sort of brought on. What we're seeing across the board, of course, are things like online shopping continuing to increase, and people turning to rather shopping online, turning to e-commerce platforms and e-commerce channels as opposed to going physically into stores. We're seeing things, in a South Africa specific context as well, in terms of streaming services. So we know that streaming is on the increase, and we know that the battle for streaming, services is heating up in South Africa, with many of the different players coming to market with new offerings or evolved offerings as well. And we know as well that gaming continues to increase, and gaming and our view of gaming has certainly evolved as well. So while we may have thought of gaming as sort of something very akin to the picture on the left-hand side of the slide, I think we're also now starting to think about gaming akin to something like the picture on the right-hand side, and not necessarily something limited to young people, young teenagers, for example, using computers or consoles to game, but something that anybody and everybody would have access to at any point in time. It's important to note how much things like streaming, gaming, etc. Are on the increase because at-home consumption being increased as people are stuck at home or choosing not to go out as often, and how much people are relying on digital channels and connectivity really, for both work as well as for entertainment at the moment. One of the other big trends that we're seeing as well is that, and I like this, I took this from a DigiDay article headline, media responsibility is now also corporate social responsibility. If you didn't end up catching it, it's some rather sad news, but a few weeks ago, there was a lot of noise around TikTok, particularly in Italy, where there was a rather tragic incident with a young girl who lost her life. Taking part in a TikTok challenge. TikTok being one of these new emerging channels, a new potential opportunity for us to take advantage of from a media advertising point of view, a new potential area for us to reach consumers, is actually also an area that we need to be quite careful of and sort of really need to pay attention to in terms of how we engage in a platform like that. And the brand safety aspects around all of the different connection touch points that we have to leverage is becoming increasingly important as well. So with all of this in mind, with all of this background in terms of where the state of our digital consumption trends are at, I guess the question that we really had as the Future of Measurement Council was, are the measurement priorities of the industry keeping pace with this? And are there changes that we need to be looking at and taking into account to ensure that we are future-proofing ourselves to prepare for any of those changes? So enter the Future of Measurement survey. This was a survey that we ran from around the beginning of December up until around the middle of Jan. It was run and shared with a select group of individuals that we had identified as sort of thought leaders from across the range of stakeholders that we have across the supply chain. So stakeholders within the brand or advertiser side, within the publisher side, as well as within the agency and specialist and education side of the digital industry. And really the primary aim of the survey was to understand the current needs of the industry with regards to measurement and the measurement priorities and some of the challenges around that, as well as to understand any potential views or to try and get any input and insight into what the future of measurement would look like for the industry. What I'm going to do now is talk at a very high level to some of the highlights and some of the things that I found really interesting when reviewing some of the results of the survey that I think are helping to shape how we approach the future of measurement as the IAB. So the first thing that I want to talk about is one of the questions that we had asked in the survey was for respondents to rank the priority of different measurement activities within their organization today. And what you can see based on this graph is that generally speaking, measurement activities across the spectrum have a relatively high priority. So there aren't any that you'd really call sort of having low priority. There certainly are sort of spikes and troughs here and there. But generally speaking, measurement seems to be, based on the results of the survey, a high priority area across the different activities that we can actually deliver on. Something else that was interesting to note was a lot of the sort of more mainstream activities, the activities that are sort of have been a part of the measurement repertoire within the digital industry for some time, really still are, appearing right at the top of the priority list for the respondents that completed the survey. So things like digital audience data and insights, website traffic and behavior, organic website ranking, and paid media campaign performance really ranking up there. What's also interesting to note is the increasing importance of things like viewability, brand safety, and digital verification. And just to the point that I made earlier around that TikTok incident and how much more sensitive I think we need to be to brand safety challenges. I think this is really great to see and helps to sort of paint a picture and frame how we should be viewing the measurement priorities of the industry going forward. So I think, interesting to see that the measurement priorities are largely aligned when we look at the data in aggregate. But then what we thought was also quite interesting was that when we split the data by respondent type, what you can see is that there are some real differences here. So some of the areas that I want to talk about in particular are, for example, the areas of brand safety, where you can see, for brands that took part in the survey, that being far more important than for any of the other respondents in terms of priority levels. From a publisher and an agency point of view, definitely things like audience data and insights, website traffic and behavior, as well as for agencies, particularly paid media campaign optimization. For publishers, viewability obviously being quite important, and that being a key metric that's now being used to help value the inventory and the value that publishers are able to put onto the table. And yeah, I think very, very interesting to see just how widely some of these key areas of measurement differ by respondent type. And one of the key things that we're looking to take forward into some of the next steps as a committee in terms of how we decide, what the future of measurement looks like and how our activities need to speak to the different stakeholders in the system. We also then asked our respondents to rank the importance of digital measurement within different channels that their organization currently today operate across. And yeah, what you can see very quickly here is that, again, I think it's very similar to the measurement activities chart. There are some sort of, the usual culprits, the channels like direct, display, paid social, for example, video, paid search, ranking quite highly, website as well. What I thought was really interesting coming out of this was some of the new and emerging channels. So things like audio, things like gaming, like digital out of home, for example, being quite low down in the priority list in terms of the importance of having digital measurement as an enabler for these channels within the different organizations of the respondents who completed the survey. What was quite interesting, though, was when looking at the flip side or the inverse of this, we also asked a separate question, which was for respondents to select or indicate which channels they felt were not currently sufficiently measured. And here again, you see audio and gaming coming up, digital out of home coming up, in addition to online to offline tracking. So, one of the things that we're sort of talking about and debating at the moment as a committee are, is this a bit of a chicken and egg scenario where, because these channels are not currently sufficiently measured, there aren't really sufficient standards of measurement across these channels at the moment. that it's therefore not a priority for these respondents. It's not an area where they're investing in currently either. So perhaps that's also why it's not a current priority. But for the future, potentially there is some priority that can be given to these channels. And yeah, I think just something to understand in terms of how we're looking at the results of the survey, certainly, and how we need to start thinking about future-proofing ourselves, particularly when it comes to emerging channels and enabling measurement in some of these emerging channels. One of the other things that we picked up, and we had asked respondents to talk to the specific tools that they use in order to enable their digital measurement activities. And one of the things that we see, and Haydn spoke about it as well, right? He had that MarTech landscape slide up, and you saw the 8,000 different solutions that were on there. The fragmentation of measurement tools and definitely the associated cost of deploying a full measurement stack are really becoming a key barrier for the industry. So on average, the respondents within the survey were using at least 6 different measurement tools across their organization to perform different measurement activities, and some organizations using as many as 12 different measurement tools to deliver on their measurement activities. Definitely something that as a committee we need to take into account when we think about the future of measurement. Do we necessarily want to add an additional tool into this already complex to navigate landscape and ecosystem, and how do we ensure that whatever we are doing and delivering as the IAB actually adds value within this landscape of a large proliferation of different measurement tools that are really, very good at delivering very specific things. One of the other questions that we asked was to try and get a sense from the respondents of the different measurement challenges that their organization was facing. And I think, the one thing that we really saw from this, and I've chosen to show you this view split by the different respondent types, so you can see the different responses for agency, brand, publisher, and specialist here, is that while there seems to be agreement around sort of, definitely the over-reliance on cookie-based measurement being a key challenge to address, and we know that that's something that's covered quite a bit, again, also in the international press and in the media, and something that we're talking about, I know quite a bit at an IAB level as well locally. There's also agreement around, the challenges of unified measurement across platforms and channels, being able to measure across sites or across the walled gardens of Google and Facebook, for example, being able to measure across channels, digital and offline channels as well. One of the key things that we took out from looking at this was the very low priority placed on sort of the challenge of understanding return on investment or return on ad spend, and across the agency, publisher, and specialist respondents, and just how high that was for our brand respondents, which I think makes a lot of sense. Those custodians of the brands really needing to understand, what is their investment, their marketing and media investment actually, delivering as return. Again, we also heard Haydn talk about this, and being able to focus on the return and the effectiveness of whatever you're doing being incredibly important. And just one of the things highlighted from here in terms of, a need, I believe, for the industry to align more effectively in terms of being able to establish the effectiveness of what we're doing in the digital space, and actually be able to show return in some way or another for our investment and for our activities. So that was a top-line view of the results of the survey. The survey is a lot more detailed and offers a lot more insights. At this stage, we're still crunching the numbers and still analyzing a lot of it. So I guess the question is, so where to from here for the Future of Measurement Committee, and how do we plan to use this data going forward? So like I was saying, we're in the process of analyzing the data. There are a lot more insights that are coming out of it. It's also no secret where the key task of the committee is to inform the measurement tender, the IAB measurement tender that is going to be launched later on this year. And we're using the survey to help us inform that in as many different ways as possible, to ensure that whatever we decide going forward is as representative as possible based on the industry's needs and the different viewpoints of the different stakeholders within the industry. So that's really where we're going to from here. And I think it's definitely an exciting road. The survey has really helped us to understand, I believe, the measurement needs and priorities and challenges of the industry a lot better. And I believe that we're gonna have a really great result at the end of this as well. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Imraan. No short challenge to package that all together for our talk. I really appreciate it. Just incredible insights. we've actually got 3 or 4 questions here for you. And while we hate to not ask them, because that's the point, right? To be able to pick your brain, I just want to leave a bit of time for Joey, and we had a bit of a late start. So sure. Thank you, Imraan. And what's amazing actually to see is just the correlation between your insights from the survey and Joey's and the Red and Yellow report on the digital skills gap, just noting some similarities, which I think will be exciting now to follow through in terms of Joey's talk. So thanks, Imraan. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Joey. So Joey, if you can turn your camera on. Thanks, Imraan. Hi, Joey, if you can just unmute and start to upload your presentation. I think to the audience shame, Joey got a brief. He had 10 minutes to talk, and now we're giving him even less time. But I think we'll hang on for the 10 minutes, and we really appreciate you putting together all those insights, Joey, from the report. How are you doing?
I'm good yourself, Paula. How things going your end?
Good, thank you. If we can do our quick poll, I think it's really relevant for Joey's talk. It's our second and last poll for today. If that can pop up, if you can just take 20 seconds to answer that. Oh, there we go. I think it's all happening. Oh, there we go. If everyone can just give that answer, maybe it'll be biased in terms of the talks we've had today already. But without further ado, let me introduce Joey Khuvutlu. Joey and I have actually worked together for years back in my glue days. So yeah, just fantastic to have you here today. Joey is an industry entrepreneur and believes in the power of design thinking and collaboration to affect positive change. And I don't think we could see more of this than in the IAB Education Council, which he leads fantastically. As the managing director or managing dude of HelloComputer Joburg, Joey has over 13 years experience in brand design and technology. Having successfully founded and led boutique agencies, he is a creative at heart, and we can't wait to hear more from you. Thank you, Joey. Oh, and our results from the poll. Let's see if this matches up. We've got the lead on data analytics and visualization. I think artificial intelligence, marketing, automation coming close third, and then a tie between user experience and digital content storytelling. Alrighty, let's see if that adds up. Thanks,
that Joey. Is incredibly interesting. And I can confirm right now that it does match up with what we found in our digital skills gap survey. But yeah, let me not get to that yet. We'll talk about it shortly. Thanks, Paula, for the intro, and thanks to both Haydn and Imraan for a great presentation. It's incredible how even when you exist in the digital world as a professional, there's always something new to learn. And this directly relates to what I'll be sharing with you today, which is skills within our industry and the learning required to improve the work that we do. Haydn painted a great picture today in terms of like technology advancements that are enabling greater capabilities and opportunities in the ever-growing digital customer universe. There are more ways and more platforms and more communities where we can reach people. As Haydn stated, the marketing technology landscape continues to grow with over 8,000 tools, systems, and technologies that we can choose from. Imraan touched on our ability to use data correctly to reduce wastage, report on return investment, and the effectiveness of the work that we do. We can improve the customer experience by understanding our customer context and connecting various platforms. And all of this within this digital universe has got the ultimate goal of delivering a better value for our businesses and the customers that we serve. The digital opportunity, however, is only an opportunity to the extent or limit of our ability to exploit the digital tools that we have at our disposal. And this relates directly to the digital skills that we have within our industry. As I talk to you today, I wear 2 hats. The one is as the director of HelloComputer, an agency that specializes in delivering marketing technology solutions for brands. And the second hat is as the lead of the IAB's Education Council. As head of HelloComputer, my personal experience has been one of a scarcity of digital skills. Throughout the years and throughout our departments, whenever we are hiring, we've found there to be a challenge in terms of the number of skills out there. And my view is that this is because the skills that are required within the digital space are skills that are also mirrored. They're also mirrored with skills that are required on the client side. So it's not just agencies and media houses that need to have these skills, but our clients need to have these skills, because that's the only way we will be able to maximize the opportunity that the digital landscape offers. This view of a skills scarcity is also shared by the fellow members of my education councils, and the broader industry at large when I'm having discussions with a number of people in a number of forums. Further to this, and taking a broader socioeconomic view, it's a shame to me, and it's quite baffling that we're experiencing the skills scarcity in a country where we're at extremely high levels of youth unemployment. So as a result, the Education Council has embarked on a digital research project to better understand what issues the broader advertising and communication industry is facing with training, recruiting, and integrating digital skills into their teams. And the purpose of the research really is to identify the skills gaps, diversity issues, and the future jobs requirements within the advertising, media, and online publishing sectors. Once we've done this research, and it's going to be a series of activations and engagements that we're going to be having, the objective of the work will be aimed at engaging education institutions so we can contribute to curricular development based on industry insights. The IAB is in a unique position where we engage with industry, the digital industry across different specializations. And at the same time, we also engage with the institutions within which our skills is being trained in. And as the Education Council, our aim is to bridge that gap, is to ensure that these institutions have got the right insights in order to design the curricula that is relevant for the skills that we need today. The other aim is also to provide the industry with relevant data so that industry can support and fund the relevant skills development. What we've found is that a lot of the funding that comes from corporate within the education space, specifically in digital, majority of it comes from the likes of banks and consultancies. And what we certainly would like to encourage is advertising in the media space to play a bigger role in funding these skill sets. And finally, this research is aimed at helping us contribute more meaningfully to policy discussions. So just before we started, I would just like to thank the Red and Yellow Creative School of Business. They are the partner that we worked with in putting this survey together. And it's been really, really great working with them. So to kick off, an overview of the research as a sample and demographics. I think it's quite interesting to have a look at this. The majority of the respondents in this survey, 45% of them came from the advertising industry, followed by 20% in the media and publishing and consultancy industry at 9.8%. What was encouraging for me to see was the seniority of the respondents that responded. There's almost like an equal representation of executives, management, and senior individuals, which means that the views that we're seeing around the skills gaps essentially look at three horizons. So your executives will be looking more at the long-term future horizons. Your management team is more focused on your midterm horizon, and your seniors within businesses are more looking at your immediate requirements right now. So I think it gives a very, very balanced view as to what's happening within the skills in our industry. Respondents were asked whether they found the need to train new employees. So basically, when new employees enter the business, do they feel that they have to do additional training beyond the training that they walk in with? And a resounding 83% stated that they have to offer digital marketing and advertising training to new employees, regardless of function within the firm or experience. And I think that last element for me is quite interesting, that regardless of function within the firm and regardless of experience. For me, what this talks to is the fact that, as Haydn mentioned earlier on, all businesses are digital. It means that there has to be a baseline understanding or acumen of digital communications or the digital world. And then the second point, where it refers to regardless of experience, talks to the fact that companies are realizing that the digital space is continuously evolving. Therefore, there's a requirement for continuous learning within the space. We also asked about the types of training that these institutions were doing, whether it was soft skills or hard skills, with 55% indicating that both hard and soft skills were required. Hard skills referred to very teachable and measurable things, such as teaching somebody how to use a specific software. And then the soft skills were more items that are less measurable, but related to stuff like teamwork. And I think that the soft skills become quite interesting given the world that we're living in right now with remote working, but I'll touch on that a little bit later. The three items on your screen really identified the three areas that employees were training. in-house training, as it were. So the first one was platform-specific certification and training. They were the most popular forms of in-house training for employees, on platforms such as Google and Facebook. Social media content training was second, and specifically language structure, tracking, boosting content, as well as the use of CMS platforms, or getting social media managers to be comfortable with navigating various technologies in order to manage the content that they look after. And lastly, it was training in paid media and advertising basics, including commonly used industry jargon and best practice in the industry. And I think that last one, training in commonly used jargon, speaks to that fact of everybody needs to have some level of digital acumen, because we're living in a world right now where you can't push the digital discussion to the digital specialist only. We all need to have a level of understanding of what's happening within the space. So moving on to the actual skills gap. In this section, we asked respondents to identify the skills gaps that they believe that they had in their companies. They were given a finite list of skills and asked to identify A, the importance of each digital skill in the organization, and B, the satisfaction with the current presence of each of those skills. Essentially, the skills they needed versus the skills that they have, or the level of the skills that they have. And as you can see, in line with the poll that we just took right now, data analytics came up as one of the most important skills that was required in organizations, but also with the biggest gap in terms of satisfaction. And being within the industry as well, I believe that this is due to the fact that there's a growing need, as Imraan referred to decrease wastage, to understand effectiveness of the work that we're doing, and to prove ROI to our clients. So the ability to grapple with data and understand data is becoming increasingly important. Marketing automation is another one that came up as a big gap. In my view, I think that the marketing automation is becoming increasingly important as well, due to the fact that there's a wide range and an increasing number of outputs that agencies need to deliver on, but budgets aren't necessarily growing at the same rate. So as a result, the use of automation technologies becomes quite important, because we're then able to identify which tasks are repetitive that we can automate versus which tasks that we can invest our people's energy on. So automation is coming quite strongly. And lastly, the user experience is the third largest gap that organizations are experiencing. In Haydn's talk again, he talked about the importance of customer experience and the business of experience. So it is encouraging to see that respondents have identified user experience as an important skill that needs to be improved. This is just a quick view of the skills in order of importance. I think this view really is an indication of the priorities versus return on investment with each of the businesses. I don't think it's a reflection on the effectiveness of any of these channels, but rather what each organization thinks is most important to cover first before they can move on to the other skill sets. And it makes a lot of sense to me that digital marketing strategy is the first one that's on there, because after all, in a landscape that's continuing to grow, as it grows, it becomes more complex. Strategy or digital marketing strategy is a place within which we simplify complexity for our clients in order to deliver on the results that they're looking for. In light of the skills discussed, respondents were also asked to identify their organization's top two priorities. And these were identified in order of importance were increasing sales, improving innovation, gaining market share, and delivering new offerings. My interpretation of this is that the aspect to improve innovation and delivering new offerings is directly related to the need of finding new ways to increase sales and to gain market share. The current tactics they utilize right now, I think in our country, may be exhausted, and agencies are looking to unpack and leverage the benefits and the abilities of digital to try new things, which is why innovation and gaining market share, I think, have come up tops. The respondents are clear that many of the skills needed in the future are strongly rooted in digital transformation and the use of data to drive business decisions. Nearly a third of all respondents identified big data and data analytics as the top digital marketing and advertising skill for the future, followed by the importance of automation, machine learning, and AI, and then content marketing and content development. This hierarchy as well is quite encouraging because for me, it mirrors what Haydn was talking about earlier on and what is required or the skills required to effectively delivering on the business of experience. COVID-19 has allowed many organizations to discover the benefits of remote working and flexible work schedules. 85% of respondents said that their organizations were planning to continue to operate remotely in the future. And as a result, these three items were identified as key soft skills that individuals need to be walking into the workspace with. Being able to effectively self-manage, not only your time and deliverables, but also be self-motivated was identified as the #1 skill for a remote working world. Interpersonal skills, the ability to communicate effectively with a remote team, developing trust and accountability was noted as the second most important skill for a remote world. If you are in the creative side of this industry, you understand that in selling ideas, it is about connection. So the ability for our professionals to have interpersonal skills really increases in the remote world. And then given that knowledge sharing is affected by remote working, new employees need to ensure that they are motivated to upskill and actively engage and learn more. So we're not in a space anymore where we can job shadow individuals by following them around and so forth. We need to develop the skills to encourage people to learn by themselves, but at the same time to reach out to their colleagues in order to grow as professionals. So finally, some key takeouts, and this is just high-level takeouts. There are a lot more findings within the report itself, but for today, I thought I should just highlight these four over here. The fact that digital acumen is important regardless of role, I think, is really an interesting one, in that all businesses are now digital businesses. So everybody from your receptionist to the strategist to the creative needs to have a certain baseline understanding of the digital world that we live in. Career-long learning. The digital landscape is continuously changing. I myself am continuously learning. It is important that employees have got support systems that allow their teams to continue learning, because if they don't, the teams will be left behind. The digital marketing landscape is incredibly complex and continues to grow. And therefore strategy, robust strategy, is becoming very, very important, because it is the task of simplifying the complexity in order to partner with clients and deliver the value that they're looking for. And finally, data, AI, and machine learning are shifting from being buzzwords to becoming business imperatives. Organizations that don't leverage on this technology, that don't understand this technology or incorporate this technology into their businesses, will not be able to deliver on customer experience or the business of experience quite effectively. So investment in these types of skills is becoming important to exist within organizations. It won't be enough to continue outsourcing these skills. And finally, the skills gap survey will be available for download on the 25th of February via the IAB website. If you would like to get a notification when it comes out, please do send an email to Paula so you can join our mailing list, and you'll be sure to get a notification as soon as the skills survey does come out. Yeah, and that's what I had for you today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joey. Just a really great review of the incredible data that came through on the report. And again, a big shout out to your council, to the Education Council, all your members, and Red and Yellow, who put that together. I think Stephen from DMAT as well, and just a special mention, Rochelle and the team. It's just been an incredible project to work on. So thank you, Joey. Really great to hear those insights. And I think, as digital transformation, digital marketing transformation, automation starts to hopefully take some of the pressure off the bottom line, potentially, like maybe the millennials might do, we reinvest that money back into the skill development required to keep that going strong, as opposed to, to the profit line, although profit's also nice. But thank you, Joey. That was really incredible. And I'm sure we'll get lots of questions over to you, but our time is up. Just thank you to everyone for staying on for all this time. We have run over, but critical insights. So yeah, we all had to pay special attention to that. So thank you to our speakers. Thank you to Joey, to Imraan, to Haydn, and a big shout out to our partners who made today possible: Gumtree, Everlytic, the Red and Yellow School of Business, Biz Community, and of course, Special Effects Media, who you don't get to see, working in the background, making sure we're on time and make sense and that our sound works. So thank you to the team there. Thank you to our audience for joining us from wherever you are. Thank you for your shout outs, for your questions. And we hope to see you at our next episode on Thursday, the 18th of March. We are focusing on unlocking the online publisher opportunity. So we're very excited about that too. Right, enough from me, and have a fantastic rest of the day. Thank you.